continue in this discussion of being redeemed to be a redemption agent and to be part of the redemption mercy history that he was raising the people from Old Testament. We have talked about the Pentateuch, the foundation, and the Torah, and the covenant that God made with Israel, and how through the major and minor prophets, he was further building up that whole area where people wanted answers, and God raised up prophets like Habakkuk. For the minor prophets, we have Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. And these are not easy for some to pronounce, especially in the language of the Hebrews. But now we understand what God was doing through this period after the major prophets to build up further on the covenant relationship, vertical and horizontal. Let me give you an example of what you go through sometime in your ministry. When someone is diagnosed with cancer, you wake up and question in your mind, what if my so-and-so had not gotten sick? Especially if you're talking about second, third, or fourth level cancer. What if we didn't have to deal with this illness? It's not cheap to treat especially cancer in the later stages. And it's very expensive, not only in terms of money, but the time and effort put in by frontline workers and even family has to walk through that journey, the grief, the pain, the agony the person is going through. And the question that runs through our mind, what if? Questions become long and tiring. What if I begin to pray? And when you pray, there don't seem to be answer. God seemed to be silent in this very difficult period, not just as one who journeys with them as frontline helpers or people helpers or family, even for that person, there don't seem to be an end. During the COVID period, I did share with you the struggles I went through, even for my treatment, for my legs, and I was in and out of hospital. I even had anxiety attack, and I went into depression. But I had a support system of people praying, and I heard God through His Word, and I was able to continue serving through that pain, through that agony, through the challenges. The what if questions are not only unanswerable, but unhealthy and unhelpful too in many circumstances. And that's what the prophets face. Even in Habakkuk, we were discussing that. They dampen our spirit and leave us what we term as frozen chosen. Quit the what ifs so that you never quit. We need to reflect on the Word of God by reading it. So we need to quit the what ifs so that you never quit walking with God. If you still remember, I covered this very important aspect. And unlike the prophets like Joel, Zephaniah, Amos, Habakkuk's prophecies have no hope of being spared destruction. Judah had finally crossed a line where there was no return. Have we come to that period now? What's happening with Israel and Hamas? Don't talk about the accord, the Abrahamic Accord. And we need to pray for wisdom as we look at what's happening before our own eye. So the purpose and theme you got to keep in mind is that it's not an academic exercise that we are going through. or theories or philosophy. Rather, it's personal, perplexing with God. It's perplexing because when you go through the pain, when you go through all the treatments, be it cancer, be it any form of sickness that will require a lot of intervention medically, and we need to be very patient with ourselves. God is patient with us. He seemed to be silent sometime through that pain, as I illustrated through the last few sessions, even during the lockdown. I was preparing you for what is lying ahead. And even this period of waiting and listening and obeying God's voice and trusting Him through the various pains. Not only you are going through with your loved one, maybe seen your loved one go through it, and some of them have crossed over to the presence of God. And you had to journey through it with them, and now you got to work through those pain, those griefs, the spiritual depression. So in the book of Habakkuk, this short book is a journey. Habakkuk, as a prophet, went on to resolve his personal perplexity with God. He had questions which had no answer, and how he worked through that. We too sometimes have questions, and they don't seem to be answers. How do we work through that perplexity with God? So this book is very relevant for us now. What is God speaking to you about in this time of difficulty? We are not over it yet. Post-pandemic, there's wars, rumors of wars, economic challenges. Maybe we have sunk deeper into disobedience like the people of God. We turn away from God. We run away. We play the blame game. We blame God. We blame the devil. We even blame those around us. Our society is unraveling like the time of Habakkuk. As a prophet, he had to understand and address it. There is violence going on at that period. There was sudden destruction when they were talking about peace and making covenants with the different group, like what we are going through now. Violence in our homes, violence in our streets, violence in our schools, violence in the public square, violence in the marketplace, violence even in the womb. Abortion and other issues are being raised. Even for this election, Biden and Trump have to address some of these in America. People who claim to know the Word and who know the Constitution. You can look at the different media, the positions they are taking, politically and otherwise. Leave alone the Middle East, leave alone the many other nations that feel they have to also involve in the United Nations Charter, in EU, in all the regions of the world. We are faced with the challenges. We can't run away. So Habakkuk's purpose and theme is very clear. This book was written to show the justice of God in allowing such terrible judgment to come upon Judah by the hands of an equally wicked nation. At that time was Babylon. Currently, there are other nations involved, like in Ukraine, Russia case, in the case of Israel and Palestinians, Hezbollah, Hamas was the one who perpetrated that violent act, and Israel had to respond because they wanted to annihilate Israel. And still, many of those whom they took are not released yet. God assumed Habakkuk was listening to his voice, and he assures that the Babylonians will also be punished and that he will save those who are faithful to him. There is a cause and effect taking place both parties. You can't just take sides in this kind of cases. And the Babylonians will also be punished. Whoever is wrong would have to stand according to the law. Not only in the time of Habakkuk, the word of God had its law, even in our own days and times. We face the consequences of some of the decisions we make. So let's keep that in mind as we listen, as we obey and trust God, to overcome the violence in homes, to overcome the violence in the streets, violence in the schools, violence in the public square, violence in the marketplace, violence even in the womb. You can't run away from such questions. As hard as you try, you got to face these questions with the Word of God directing you. So being a missionary God with the missionary Bible and you being part of that redemptive history, the redemptive mercy, the agent of God, need to interact. You can't be detached. You need to be part of that solution. And sometimes idealism is part of the solution. Idealism of the word as we understand it, idealism of our own struggle with our family members, with society, workplace. You can't pretend that everything is turning on fine. Even after this pandemic, we lost many lives along the way. And of course, there were some who were anti-vaccination, and many took the vaccination, not just the first 2 rounds, but the boosters. And you also felt the temperature, the pain, the sicknesses. You had to get away from work. You need to monitor. You need to do the checks and even be safe distancing. So social responsibility is part of this journey, even in walking with God and fulfilling His destiny for our life in redemption, in redemptive history or salvation history as we understand it. It's easy to question God. God, I do not understand. It's easy to throw mud or do mudslinging on God or His servants or leaders or church members. I saw that happening even during this period, the lockdown. A lot of people had to stay home and they had to listen and watch through the Zoom, and they had to also cope up with their family tensions, challenges. Many of them were home-based learning or working from home, hybrid, even now. And after the lockdown, only 70% returned back to church, so to say, at least in the context of Singapore. 30% was missing in action. But they have their reason for not going to church, other than falling sick or taking care of old folks or the sick, the needy, or even working to recover the losses they made. And not easy to work and study or work and try to recover from the failures in the working place, in business. I was just talking with Johnny and Nick that they are speeding up. Even in the business world, they have to recover the losses they have made. And they have to set up new platforms and products and production, and business as usual is over. So with God is the same. He's dealing with us even now. He's showing us what to do next so that we can break through the problem with the promise towards the provision. Prosperity is part of that journey, but prosperity is not a shortcut. There's no shortcut prosperity. There's no bless me club here. You need to listen, you need to obey, you need to do the purpose of God. Don't just ask why, you need to ask why not. As God molds our character, as God uses us to touch lives, our lives included. There's no shortcut in walking with God. God bless.